Just switching it on. Here we go.
There we go. Sorry, it didn't come up on my thing to say we were recording. Okie dokie. Now that we've got that technicality out of the way, should we make a start? Okay. So, morning, everybody, and welcome to our session today on preparing for performance reviews. Normally, this is a part where we introduce ourselves, and it's myself and my lovely colleague, David Hudson. However, David is with a client today, so you just get me for today. I am the owner and director of the HR department Coventry, and I work very closely with David and all of his, as you can see from the list, many different sites that he is looking after. And we pick different topics each month to just do a little whistle-stop tour of some good things to think about, bits and pieces that we think will be useful to everybody. So today we are covering performance reviews. So we're going to be covering why they matter, what good reviews can achieve, how to get the meat of it, how to prepare, how to give feedback, which can be a tricky one, and a little bit about goal setting and linking objectives. So just so you know, if you've not been to one of these before, I have a tendency to ramble on because I really like talking about HR and I really like these subjects. So Kirsty will very kindly interrupt me when we get towards the 10-minute mark, because we do like to do a Q&A session. I have had a question come in from somebody who's going to watch the recording later. So if you have any questions, feel free to either put them in the chat box as we're going along, stick your hand up as we're going along, or wait till the end and I can answer questions at the end. So, you know, feel free to ask as much or as little as you'd like. So preparing and conducting the reviews. So a little bit on, you know, hopefully you have some form of review in place. They are something that I am really stressing is probably too dramatic a word, but really encouraging people to use within their teams, because we are seeing a lot of issues, not issues, probably the wrong word, but a lot of challenges, you know, with recruitment. And one of the kind of ways to combat challenging recruitment is to have a team who are happy, flourishing, know what they're doing. And part of the key to that, you know, people always say, you know, the money, the benefits, rah, rah, rah. But actually, I think a review is really important, because if you've been working somewhere and you don't have a clue if you're doing well, not doing well, you think your boss is happy, you're not sure, you don't know what you want to do next, all those things could be reasons why people might leave. And they may leave and just say, I just want to do something else, when actually you could have given them that opportunity within your own organization and not lost years worth of talent and skills that have been built up. So when we're thinking about doing the reviews, preparation is always key. And I think the problem with the preparation is sometimes it can feel quite like a chore and a bit of a kind of a burden to have to do. But I think, you know, being properly prepared, as cheesy as it always sounds, is the key to success. So you want to go into that meeting knowing what you're going to say, knowing what you're going to talk about. And ideally, your employee should go into the meeting knowing what they want to say and what they want to talk about. I always say, I will probably talk about this a few times during this webinar, is that reviews shouldn't be a surprise. So it might be nice to kind of give them some good feedback. It might be nice to give them, you know, whatever is happening. But actually, they shouldn't go into that and go, oh my goodness, I had no idea that somebody had put a complaint in. Or, oh my goodness, I had no idea that I've been doing that job wrong for the last 4 months. These should be continuous things, and the review should just be capturing it all. So that leads me on to the points. What you need before the meeting is the evidence. So this is ideally hard evidence, or at least actual evidence. It's not, I feel like you're always late, I feel like you didn't do well on that project. It's you didn't do well on that project because of XYZ. This is what we can do to help you next time. Okay. If you've got goals and KPIs, you may have had goals from the last review. Great to have checked if they've done any of those, if they're up to date with those. Were they easily achieved within the first couple of months? Then they need to be harder. Were they not achieved? In which case they need to be a bit softer. And if you've got KPIs, obviously we want to look at those. Get your feedback from different places. You know, I always like to do a bit of an up and a down. So you're looking, the person hasn't got anybody below them. What do their colleagues say about them? Not in a horrible way, but just, what's the general feel, especially if they're new, how are they getting on, how are they interacting? And the same with, people above, maybe the people above you, how are they seeing this person? Because actually what you see and what somebody higher up sees may be quite different because you are in the day to day. If you're doing the do all the time, it's hard to look above. So getting those different sources, always helpful. If your reviews have it, we always like the employee to do their self-assessment before they come, because actually we want them in that headspace of thinking about what have they done well, what has been a challenge, what do they want to achieve. If they come in, there's nothing worse for me personally than an employee who comes into a review and goes, I don't know, I don't know, I haven't done anything. It's so hard because where do you go from there? You're sort of trying to, then the whole meeting becomes trying to help them think about their job. And it's like, my job is not to think about your job. Your job is to think about your job. And that just winds me up because it just, that lack of care. So identify, episode bottom one is 2 to 3 priorities. So again, said it once, we might need to do a tally of it, Kirsty. The review shouldn't be a surprise. So you should have 2 or 3 really key things that you want to discuss. If there are major things that have been happening, you should have been having those conversations along the way. It shouldn't just be, oh, well, we're having the review in a month's time, so I'll just save it up. That's not fair on the person. It's not fair on you, because actually, if somebody's doing something wrong, we should be getting stuff fixed sooner rather than later. So how we like to structure them is some context. So how is the business doing? How is the department doing? Those sorts of things. Where are we it's a good place to do a bit of a business update. Where are we heading? Where would we like to be? What do we want to see? I like to start with their reflection on things first. And the reason is because I find reviews go better and it's more of a conversation where you let them speak first. Because if they talk first, it's their meeting. Obviously, you've done a bit of context, but it's their meeting. They're talking to you about how their year, 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is, how their time has been. If you start first, you're telling them how their year has been. And that's a bit of a contradiction because we want them to show up and be engaged in their job and engaged in this process, but you're going to sit there and tell them what you think about them, which again, it kind of hampers the process. So where possible, get them to talk first, then do your part, then a bit of a discussion, because sometimes you're going to need to give feedback. Sometimes stuff that they think was great, you didn't agree with. Sometimes stuff that they didn't think was great, you thought was brilliant. So there's going to be a bit of a back and forward on it. And you need to be aligned, because the last thing you need is the person coming out of that meeting think, well, that was an absolute waste of time because they don't listen or see anything that I do. I'm not valued, I'm not appreciated. This leads us back to, we're going to then have to recruit to replace them. So we want that discussion, healthy debate, and then a bit of forward planning, because the whole point is, what have we done? What can we improve? What are we going to do in the future? And these ones are, so this key principle at the bottom is quite a nice one. It's their conversations. So it's a work in progress. This is, yes, it's your observations, it's your thoughts on what has happened, but also you're not there doing their job every day. You're not a parrot on their shoulder following them around. So there might be stuff that you weren't aware of. There might be context you weren't able to see. So we're not giving a verdict. We've moved on, hopefully, from the old fashioned days. When I used to work for Tesco, I was a manager, and my manager used to sometimes fill out my form, give it to me and go, there you go, there's your review. Can you sign it? And I was like, can I read it? What's in it? It's a bit of a mystery. So we're not giving a verdict like a judge in court. We are having an open discussion because we want people to be involved in their own development, their own progress, their own jobs. So what are we going to do? So some of these we've already covered as common mistakes. So saving the feedback, unless it happened yesterday and the review is today, I wouldn't save it. If it's important, especially, don't save it up, good or bad, because people, first of all, people love to know good stuff. And second, they deserve to know anything bad. If they've had a complaint or something, then they absolutely deserve to know about it in a timely manner. I would feel terrible, and I'm sure you probably would, if somebody told you that 6 months ago you had a complaint and it's too late to do anything about it now, but we're going to use it to kind of beat you around the head with in your review. It's not what we're aiming for. Same with overloading with too many issues. If we're doing timely stuff as it happens, there shouldn't be too many things. Pick 2 or 3 main ones, and then let's talk about them in the review. Comparing employees to other employees, not going to work well. Not going to work well. If any of you got, like, guys have siblings, it's not great to be compared to your brothers or sisters, is it? You know, so and so's doing a much better job at school, never went down well. So it's the same with your employees. You can say, go to so and so, they are great with helping, they can help you with this, or you can watch them do this process, or, you know, there's options of how you can explain the standard you're looking for without being like, Greg's doing a great job and I don't know why you're struggling. Talking more than listening is, again, back to, it should be it's their review, it's their job, it's their day-to-day life. So we should be having them speak first. We should be letting them have their say. And then we need to end on clear next steps, because you want something to build on, some goal to take forwards. Otherwise, what's the point? Otherwise, it's just like a school report when you were at school, obviously, school reports at school. You know, it's like, oh, well, yeah, it was all right. I'll give you kind of a B+. See you next year. Okay. Conscious of the time, Kirsty. So we're going to do a little about constructive feedback, because I think this is the part that throws people off. It's a bit that can be uncomfortable, and it's a bit that we can all be better at. You know, I myself always like to, you know, try and improve on things. And I don't like conflict. So I don't like giving bad news necessarily. I have to, you know, put my big girl pants on and do it, but it's not comfortable. It doesn't come naturally to me. So these are things that I like to kind of structure around it. So the psychology of it is, we want feedback to be specific, fair, and we're looking forward to the future. We are not trying to beat people up with anything negative, you know, because if they are a good person, they're probably going to beat themselves up anyway. So there is no point in, you know, the olden days you used to have your manager shout at you, and then you'd leave the room feeling like absolute crud. And then, you know, that's probably ruined your day. They're not getting anything useful out of you. All you're going to focus on is that you made a mistake or you did something wrong. There's no real like, what are we going to do next? How are we going to fix it? It's just, then, you know, you ruined my day and I'm not going to really be useful for the rest of the day. So we're doing a shift over from judgment to development, which sounds a bit fluffy and HR-y and cheesy. But actually, if you want the best out of people, people are going to mess up. They're human beings. They're not robots. They're not machines. So they're going to mess up. They're going to make choices. They're going to make decisions, and they're not always going to be right. So, okay, that wasn't right. What can we do to fix it? So this one is a very, very brief little feedback model, which is the SBI model. It's situation, behavior, impact. And I've given a nice little example. So we describe the situation and we're specific. During last week's client presentation, blah, 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 or whatever situation was. The behavior, the slides were rushed. The impact made it harder for the stakeholders to follow. So really, really, really simple. What was it? What did you do? What was the impact? And then it's easy. We can build on that. Next time, let's slow down the slides. Let's put less information on them. Let's run through it first to make sure that we don't have to speed ahead. So we're giving the feedback, we're letting them know what happened, but we're also helping to, you know, and maybe they can even say, ideally, oh, okay, I didn't realize I was rushing through. Next time I will slow it down, or next time I'll put less slides and just talk a bit more. They might work it out themselves, not give a suggestion. So this is still giving the feedback. You're not shying away from it. You're telling them what happened. And then we have something to build on. So we need a glug of coffee. Bear with me. So we're using it and making it actionable. So I think sometimes that comes from, you just want to tell them what happened, drop the bomb and run away. So this one here, it's got, instead of doing, you need to improve communication, we'll send weekly updates every Friday and I'll review the first 2 with you. So we are using the observations, the impact, and we're giving that improvement at the same time. And sometimes that can be hard because you know what happened, but maybe you don't know the person's thought process, you don't know what was going on, you don't know the context. So sometimes it can be hard to come up with that improvement or that support. But it's important because when we're in these reviews, the whole point is, this is what's been happening, this is what we want to see, this is what we want the future to be like, and we need to kind of sort of follow a pathway with it. So some tips are we're asking coaching questions. So we're not doing, well, why did you do that? That was really stupid. We're trying to be a bit more caring and understanding. We're going to pause and not just leap straight into it. We're going to do that deliberately to give, again, back to give that person time to talk. We're going to both make sure we're on the same page, because I've seen it before where you are explaining some feedback to somebody and the person clearly does not understand. You can see that glazed look in their eyes. They're not getting it. So you need them to be able to explain that they understand, and that so that you both can understand, because otherwise the same issue is going to happen again. And document it. If you need them to do, we'll use that example from that other slide. If they're rushing through slides when you're presenting to clients and the clients are like, ooh, slow down, don't know what's going on, I would document that and just put it in an email or put it in the review and say, these are some feedback that we've had. This is what we need to work on. So where are we? Oh, we're getting close. We're getting close. Goal setting, goal types. So we've got the main chunk of the review done. We've prepped for it. We've thought about intentionally what are we going to go in to do. We've discussed any feedback. They've told you how their year, 6 months, half, quarter has been. So we've got to that bit. Now we need to work out, what are we doing moving forwards? So goal setting and goal type. So why do we fail with the goals? Giving people too many, being too vague, nothing that they can measure at the end, and it's disconnected from the business as well. So we're going to use that other slide, was better communication. Too vague. What does that even mean? How will we even know what is, one person's idea of better communication could still be not enough communication to another person. So leaving it too vague and not measurable is not really helpful. And also, we need to think about what the business needs. So if the business is trying to grow, then you're going to need something slightly different from your employees than if the business is just in a stable position and we're just keeping as we are. So there are 3 different goals that you can have, and they seem quite obvious, but I think sometimes we forget and we focus too much on a certain type. So performance goals are probably the one, KPIs, stuff like that we focus on, because that's nice and easy. There's a number. We're in a business, we're all trying to make money, and most of us. So, you want line to go up. That's all we really, really are focused on. But actually, there are things underneath that need to drive it. So the second one is the capability. So what skills do they need? Do they need to do something to improve what they've got? Do they need to do a course? Do they need to watch somebody else? Do they need to just think about what they are doing? Again, back to that issue with the slides. That's a skill issue, isn't it? That's just use that feedback and work on it. And the last one is behavioral. So that tends to be more as we're moving up through the kind of hierarchy and chain of command. But actually, you need your employees to work together. If you've got a big team, it's no good having somebody who is amazing at their job, but causes friction within the team. We've all probably worked in places where there is that, and it is really difficult to try and work with somebody and try and, excuse me, try and improve things when their attitude is, well, the job gets done, so it doesn't matter. Well, it does. So let's put some bits in place to help with that. I'm gonna have another bit of tea. So, goal design. I've done it really simple. You've probably, hopefully, all heard of the SMART framework. So it's
minutes, Charlotte.
Oh, thank you. So it needs to be, if we're setting a goal, it needs to hit all of these things, the S and the M and the ART, to make sure that it's actually a workable, usable goal that somebody can actually do. Again, back to that better communication. Not specific, it's not measurable. Might be achievable, but how do you know if we can't fill it into those first 2? Might be relevant, and it's also not time bound. Better communication by when? By tomorrow, by next week, by a year's time? How are we measuring it? So when you're setting goals, think about that little SMART acronym. It needs to be those things for it to work, because otherwise, if you, for example, you could do SMANR. If you don't do T, when are they going to do it by? So they could do it by, if you're doing yearly reviews, you've kind of given them until next year. They could just do it the week before. But actually, if you give them a time scale for it, then that's, that brings that time down. It's much easier when people know and people can work within these bounds. And then we like to sometimes add on a little bit of developmental stuff as well. to help build capability. So we've got our smart target, but have we got something that actually stretches them and pushes them? Is there an extra element that we can add in? And that's a bit of a cheat because it doesn't sit into the smart framework. But you need to think about those things, because actually, if people just do the same thing over and over again, are they going to get bored? Some might love it, some might hate it, some might decide, actually, I'm always doing the same things in this business. Nothing ever seems to change. I'm going to go somewhere else. And then you lose good people just through boredom, because you didn't give them something to a bit more structure. And then, excuse me, that last one is a maximum of 3 to 5. If I gave you 10 things to try and remember for a whole year, the likelihood is you're probably not going to remember them. What we don't want to do is set people up to fail. So the last bit is a bit of a weightier one. Kirsty was like, maybe we don't put this in, but I think it's important, because actually, if your business has specific goals, those need to be filtered into people's reviews. So I've done a little layer, and my very bog standard, very basic, maybe that should be a development one for me, is to make a prettier PowerPoint. But really simply, if your business is trying to do something, that should feed into the team's objectives, which should feed into the individual's goals. And you can make it as, specific and, measurable and all of those things. But the reality is, there's no point in the team moving this way, your individual goals moving this way, and the business is trying to move that way, because you're all pulling in different directions. If there's some cohesion through all of it, in theory, if the people are meeting their goals, the team are meeting their objectives, the organization then meets what it wants. So how do we help people to grow and succeed within the business? Because actually, if they understand what the business is aiming to do, if that's growth, if that's just plodding along for a little bit, if that's, pulling themselves up because you've had a bad year, they need to know that, because then they can work on that. And it all connects together, because, if you're wanting to grow, you need to grow the team, you need to recruit new people. It means you need to have people who are ready and able to train new people, which means you need good people in place ready to train new people. There's no point having a rubbish team and then adding new people to it. It's going to make more rubbish of a team. It's not even a word, but well, you know what I meant. So last, I think this might be my last bit, is career development. So I've talked about it a little bit as we've been going through. Is career development is normally seen as like you progress and progress and you go up through the career ladder. But actually, I think some of it is, how can you grow and develop within your own role? Some people don't want to be climbing the career ladder. Some people can't climb the career ladder. Some people have commitments at home. Some people have stuff that they want to focus on more, and that's completely fine. But actually, how do you challenge them within that role? How do you make sure that they're not doing the same job for 10 years, day in, day out? Because people get bored. We are human beings. We want to be out in the world, and doing the same thing day in, day out is not good for us. We need to have variety. And actually, if you've had somebody who's a really solid, great person, they deserve to be able to, expand up if they want to move upwards, or just expand out, give them a bit more knowledge, depth, breadth, all of that. And so think about, these are questions for you to think about with that person, and to ask them, where do you see your next steps? Like, what do you want to do? They might surprise you. They might pull something out that you never even thought of for them. So it's a good idea to have those questions. Even if they say, no, I'm totally happy as I am, I think it's a good idea to ask everybody and not just assume. You might think that they're a bit older and they might not want to climb the career ladder, but it actually might be a great time for them because their kids have left home and gone to uni, and now is a perfect time for them to focus more on their career. So you never know what's going on. And ongoing development. So I put there quarterly check-ins. You don't have to do quarterly check-ins, but if you're doing an annual review, a year is a long time. So you should be checking in with your people, because that's what you do. You're running that. You're running the team. You're their manager. You're their senior person. We should be checking in. We should be tracking what they're doing. Ideally, we should be adjusting goals if things change. So if your business suddenly takes on a huge contract and what they're doing changes, it's a bit unfair in 6-8 months' time to then come back and go, well, we didn't achieve those goals because you were doing this other side project, or we seconded you out to a different department. It's a little bit like, setting somebody up to fail. And also recognizing early improvement. That's a really important one because actually, if you've managed to smash your targets and you've done really well, and we're 8 months into the year, that should be celebrated. And it shouldn't just wait till you have another 3 months time and you have your, you know, your yearly review. We should be celebrating that, that's that feel good factor for people. And at the bottom is my favorite. The reviews are kind of summarize progress. You should have already talked to them throughout the year. They should have an understanding of how they're doing, what they need to improve on. Maybe not in depth, but at least to some extent. We shouldn't just introduce surprises. Nobody should go to their review and be absolutely blown away because they had no idea what was going on and what was happening. It's not fair to them. And it's also not a great way of managing it because then you've got to wait a whole year. You're just going to wait a whole year before you even bring stuff up. So that also can be very stressful. So I think we're vaguely on time for a change, Kirsty. So I have had one question come in. And if anybody has got any questions, I'll have a look in the message. Oh, I think there might be something in there as well. So my question for somebody is, when is the best time to prepare and how long should it take? Which feel like is a bit of a question of how long is a piece of string. So when is the best time to prepare? I would say, depending on how busy you are, I would aim to do at least some of it 2 weeks before. I probably wouldn't do it too far in advance unless you absolutely have to, because you want it clear in your head. You want to be able to remember it. Equally, I wouldn't leave it to like a week before or the day before. I know that life gets in the way and sometimes you have to. But the reality is you want time to be able to go and speak to other people, gather some evidence, look up past emails. And if you're leaving yourself a couple of days to do it, if you then get busy, you're going to not have time to do it. And then you're going to either rush and do it right before, and then that person's not getting a great review, or you're not going to do it at all. And then you're going to move to the review. And I'm not a big fan of moving reviews because I feel like those times should be sacred, is a bit dramatic, but put it in stone. You're giving that person time to talk about them, their career, their job. So let's not keep it, treat it as a movable object. If you've got meetings that absolutely have to happen, can they not happen around it because something is already in your diary? So just that's one to think about. And then, yeah, how long it should take. Again, we're not making a chore from ourselves. I think the how long it should take is maybe give yourself an hour. If you've not got a lot to look at, a lot to talk about, because you've been doing it all throughout the year and you've been wonderful, then great, happy days. Gives you time to spare. But equally, I think if it's taking longer than an hour, there's some real issues there. And what is in the chat? Apologies. Just have a look. So I've got a question. Tips on what controls and safeguards should be in place to ensure multi-source feedback is objective and evidence-based. Oh, that is a great question. Controls and safeguards seems a little okay. I think depending on how you want to structure it, just a conversation with people. I think sometimes as a manager, you need to play a little bit of a double bluff, and having a conversation with people and just understanding their thoughts and feelings on how somebody else is getting on is all you really need. I think if they are raising something more serious, then it's more of a sit down, pen to paper kind of conversation. But actually, for me, if I was talking to my colleagues and asking, I'm going to pick on you, Kirsty, sorry, and saying, how have you been getting on with Kirsty recently? Any issues? Everything okay? That's their opener to say, well, actually, I've been getting on great. She's done some wonderful things. Thank you very much. Or to say, actually, I had a real issue with this email, blah, 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 blah. If I would always be very careful, depending on how intense your reviews are, you don't necessarily need to be going out and giving feedback forms. I know some people like to do 360 feedback forms and get a lot of it. And I think sometimes that way madness lies, because everyone's going to have an opinion. Really, what you want is just a bit of a temperature check sometimes. Oh, there's another question. I'm new in post. My team have not had annual reviews for over a year. I'm still getting to know them. I recognize the importance of having them. So I'm starting with the review to discuss how they feel the last year has gone, put targets in place for the coming year. Lovely. and see how I can support them. So maybe a bit different. Previous managers left, so hard to get feedback, or prepared to start fresh with them and move forward in a positive way. Does that work? I think that's brilliant. I think that's such a good way of doing it. If you're new to that role, you can't look back, even if they had reviews done in, recently, you can't then look back and say, oh, I think you're doing great at this goal that you were set, because you don't have that data, you don't have that information, you don't have that, haven't seen that. So I think just having something as a jumping off point to say, these are some bits I've seen that you might need to work on, but actually, it's all good, because actually you can build on that. Even if you do then do the annual review whenever it's meant to be later in the year, you've used that as your base point for you and for them as well, so they know where you're getting on. It is a tricky one taking over though, because you don't have that previous knowledge. And again, context and understanding of what's gone on can always be really useful. So again, it might be worth speaking to one of your colleagues if there is somebody there who knows the team at all, or somebody higher up that you can get information from as well, because they, people have eyes, they see what's going on, they hear, what's going on. So it's a good source of information, even if you're not necessarily going to use it in the reviews, but at least to give you a starting point of anything that's happened. There we go. Any more questions? I think that was it for the chat. No? Okay. Cool. When my laptop wants to work. Apparently it doesn't want to work. Oh my goodness. There we go. So this is the last little bit, and it's not my favorite thing to do, but we are HR experts. We are outsourced HR company. This is our bread and butter. So we can absolutely help you. If you are struggling with, maybe you've got a bit of an old review system, maybe you want to bring in something that's a bit more modern, a bit more flexible, a bit more aligned to what you're trying to do as a business. If you're even just trying to get away from the old-fashioned one review every year and move into 6 monthly or quarterly, and trim those down so that they're not quite so onerous of a task, we can absolutely help you with that. We cover a huge range, as you can see on the screen, of HR support, HR advice. We have a really friendly, knowledgeable team, and we've got a lot. Well, some of us have got a lot of years of experience. I won't say quite how many, but we're looking at I'd say probably hundreds of years of experience within the team as a collective. So you're not going to be able to ask us a question we probably haven't come across, whether that's performance and review related, or it's anything else employee related. We can absolutely help you out. And that was everything. As a miracle, I'm only 5 minutes over, which, if you are new to this is a miracle. Thank you so much for attending, for letting me waffle on. Hopefully there's some bits that you can take away from that are useful. Like I said at the beginning, we have recorded this, so if you want, we will be sending it out later on. If you do want to go back and watch it, you can. We have a YouTube channel which you can go back and watch all of our previous ones. We've done, I think, about a year, maybe 2 years now, 18 months, Kirsty, something like that. So there's loads and loads. We have got more coming up every single month. So if you want to be kept up to date, please email Kirsty and get onto our mailing list, because it's the quickest way to find out what is coming up. Or if you have any ideas or suggestions of stuff you would like to see, more than happy to take audience requests. We want to tailor these to you. You are the people out there in the trenches, running the businesses, running the departments, running the teams. So if there's something that you feel is important to you that actually you could do with a quick half-hour blast on what to do in situations, please let us know, because we are more than happy to take requests. So that's it. So thank you very much. And oh, hang on, there is something some more in the questions. Oh, lovely. Thank you. There we go. Got another question from Sharon Sagan and PDP forms to complete, which I hope we're going to see feedback. Keen to start somewhere. Yeah, Sharon, that does sound like a really good idea. I think you are on it. So don't doubt yourself. You've got to start somewhere with something. So hopefully that was useful to everyone, and thank you and goodbye. Do you want to stop recording, Kirsty? There we go.